All right, and welcome into another edition of the Vegas Squares podcast. We are coming to you live from the studio, and I have a special guest in. Anthony decided to go home and hang out with his folks for Thanksgiving, so we're going to have a little bit of Rex Charger action.
Hello.
For the next few podcasts.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
I am excited to have you here. And we have a new producer in the studio. She's gone by many names, but what are you going to go by? What are you going to classify yourself as on the podcast?
God, I wanted to go with DMAC, but it just doesn't fit.
No, it doesn't fit. You should try. You should try something else.
Well,
DMAC sounds like a black porn star.
Kind of.
And I am not a black porn star.
No.
I think I'll go with D-Ray.
D-Ray. So we got D-Ray, the new producer. She's welcome aboard. She's definitely enthusiastic and ready to learn, and definitely not a black porn star. So I think I did good in the hiring process, not bringing a black porn star into the studio. So although there's still time, we got an hour left.
It's early.
So we got Rex, we got D-Ray, I am Aaron, and we are going to brush up on the weekend that was in football. There were some interesting topics.
It was a weekend.
Yeah, I mean it was a boring weekend in terms of matchups and the slate, but. Every week it seems like, with the cameras catching every single thing, nothing is going to get away from the public eye.
Yeah.
So, without further ado, let's jump into it with the Baker Mayfield saga, I guess you will. I mean, who started this? I mean, Baker Mayfield's obviously got a temper. I mean, that's been evident this season. He's got a bullseye on his back because everyone knows he's the best and everyone's taking their A game right to his face.
Right.
But, I mean... In the essence of sportsmanship, if you don't shake my hand when I go to shake your hand in the beginning of the game, fuck you.
Yeah, I'm going to punch you right in the mouth.
I'm going to punch you right in the mouth on and off the
Literally
field.
or figuratively.
And I'm going to hold my dick while I do it. And that's exactly what he did. So, I mean, what were your thoughts initially? I mean, I was listening to Colin Cowherd, and he's all appalled by it, shocked and awe, but the fucking kid's 20 years old. I mean, and he's getting disrespected on the field in today's day and age where you don't get disrespected. So, I'm okay with it.
The whole thing kind of bothers me a little bit because it's twofold. First of all, that it's an issue to begin with, and second of all, how it gets blown up.
Well, it gets blown up because professionally it's going to affect his draft status.
Yeah, why?
I call.
Why?
Yeah. Take the higher road.
What does that like? Are they going to say, well, it calls into question his content of character?
Yes, that is exactly.
Because he's 20 years old.
Because in the meat market process that is the draft, I mean, they're going to question everything. They're asking people if they're gay or not, or how they would react to a gay locker room teammate, or not a gay locker room, but a gay teammate. Your locker room's pink. Well, Iowa's is pink, so I guess that works. But, I mean, I guess my first initial thought professionally is, yeah, it's probably a little bit over the line, and... it may affect some questions that he's asked, but it's not going to affect his draft status.
Yeah, it's a bad move, and in the 24-hour sports news cycle, this is going to blow over fairly quickly.
Oh, sure, yeah.
This isn't a long-term crotch gate. It's not going to be that big of a deal. In a month, we're going to have totally forgotten about it.
Well, and that's the thing. We're talking about, we're talking about it in this 24-hour news cycle, but, nobody's saying anything about Kansas. It's just because they got their doors blown in on the field, so they're just going to let Kansas be Kansas. I mean, you don't shake my hand. I mean, I think that's an issue, too.
Yeah, exactly.
None of those guys are NFL prospects, so.
That's a fair point as well, but why isn't that an issue?
Yeah, nobody seems to be talking about that.
The root cause of this is because Kansas displayed unsportsmanlike behavior.
Yeah, I mean, that's the situation. You shake my hand, we avoid all of this, and I probably don't have I don't think he should have apologized, to be honest with you, but I can see why Oklahoma probably made him do it. I mean, his own coach, Lincoln Riley, was like, look, man, they started it. I mean, for lack of a better term, I don't know exactly what he said in his press conference. He's like, look, they started it. So,
right.
To me, I don't know if Baker Mayfield's going to be affected by this. I think he's still going to win the Heisman as long as his campaign still continues to trend upward. I don't think there's anybody even in his universe at this point.
No, he's far ahead of the favorite.
Yeah, so, I mean, he's got a chance to make a playoff appearance. He's got a chance to win a national title. He's got a chance to win a Heisman. He's got a chance to potentially be a top 15 draft pick. So he may have overreacted a little bit in the sense of, it's a handshake. He should have just gone with it. But he's 21 years old. I mean, he's a kid. We all had that situation where, you felt like somebody took advantage of you and you don't like it that much.
And if this was as recently as 12 or 15 years ago, that probably doesn't get caught on camera. There's just so many cameras on the field.
Social media.
And then social media propagates it.
Well, and it's also a form of respect to shake the other player's hand. And just because they didn't, he should have taken the higher road, though, and not grabbed his crotch on the side of the field.
Sure, but, I mean, I think the general premise from the media, why they're actually giving him a lot of scrutiny, is you start to see traces of Johnny Manziel.
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
All over again. You start to see Johnny Manziel all over again. The paper, the money symbols and all that bullshit he did at Texas A&M. And if Johnny Manziel was a good player in the NFL, or if he was a superstar.
What do you mean he's not? He's not?
He's a cult icon. He's not a superstar in the NFL.
Oh, I thought he was. Oh.
You're thinking of Colt McCoy. Colt McCoy is a superstar in the NFL.
I'm kidding.
But my point is that I think if Johnny Manziel had a successful NFL career up to this, Baker Mayfield may have gotten a little bit more of a pass because people have been like, well, I like that he acts like this as long as he does this on the field, which right now he is.
Right, yeah. If you showboat and back it up, sure.
Yeah, so, okay, you flip the coin toss, you don't shake my hand, I'm about to destroy you, and then I'm going to hold my nuts while I do it. So, D-Ray.
I'm just going to park these right over here.
D-Ray, what are your thoughts on I know you said it's a sign of respect, but after he put on the show he put on the field, are you okay with his apology? Are you wondering why he apologized? Or?
No, I'm okay with his apology. I think it needed to happen just because of his stature in the college, leagues and stuff, and him going for the Heisman Trophy. I think he really needs to clean up his ego a little bit and put himself out there and apologize.
Rex, does this actually affect him if he has a good season the rest of the way, though? No.
As long as he maintains the level of play that he's currently playing at, it just blows over quickly. But the bigger issue to me, like you mentioned it, is that the signs of maybe he is a little bit too big for his britches, but a la Johnny Manziel. But I really don't think this is going to be a long-term thing.
Yeah, that could be an issue, and I think anybody who decides to take a flyer on him, I think that ego. I mean, I can't imagine him going to Cleveland right after Johnny Manziel. That's
right.
But anybody who determines that they can take on that ego, I think will put him in check pretty quickly.
Right.
So, let's talk about the rest of the slate in college football. There was a couple of interesting games. Obviously, playoff matchups. We had 2 bye weeks in Alabama and Clemson. Oh, no, they did have games, didn't they?
They did Mercer and the Citadel.
Oh, okay, yeah, great. Yeah, fantastic. I talked about this
in November.
But yeah, well, I talked about this with Anthony last week, and I think I haven't really looked in depth on Clemson's schedule, but I think Saban's a genius. He gets away with it. The SEC schedule is so tough. Quote unquote tough. You put that game in November against Western Carolina, against Mercer, and after you've played after you've played Mississippi State and right before you play Auburn, and nobody says anything, you're allowed to kind of have that bye week to prepare for the Iron Bowl. I think it's genius.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think it's a strong move, and if it's allowed, then go ahead and exploit the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, most programs' non-conference schedule would include a couple cupcakes in the beginning, maybe an out-of-conference rivalry like Florida State,
right?
Stuff like that. But I mean, Saban, it's genius, and I think this is the first year I've actually noticed it, that right in this area he puts basically a bye week, a scrimmage.
Yeah, a tune-up.
Yeah, so they're essentially the number 1 team in the nation is getting 2 bye weeks. It's a statistical advantage to them every single year.
Right.
I mean, I didn't notice it until this year. I think it's genius. So they had bye weeks, Citadel and Mercer. We'll bypass those games. Both teams played well. Both teams did what they needed to do. Both teams stayed healthy. So
both teams won by 50-plus points.
Yeah, exactly. So Miami had a little hiccup this week.
Looked a little ugly when it was 28-14.
Yeah. So if you listened to the last podcast, I did tell you to take UVA in the first half plus 10. That was a good bet.
Winner, chicken dinner.
Yes, it was. But second half was a different animal. I think UVA forgot to come out for the second half. I think they were just resting their laurels on the first 30.
Yeah, which is really disappointing because they showed a lot of talent and a lot of flashes in that first half, and then they came out so flat on offense in the second half.
Yeah, so does this situation, I feel last week the playoff committee had no choice but to put Miami in because of their drubbing of Notre Dame. I think this might hurt them.
Maybe a little bit, but they won the game. They came back. They did what they had to do. All you could do is get W's.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Clemson's been doing, and they've been ugly and they've been working. But
except Clemson is the team I had the biggest issue with in the top four.
Well, I do too. I think.
I don't care if your quarterback was hurt. You lost to fucking Syracuse.
Yeah, you lost to Syracuse. Yeah,
Syracuse is the last place team in your division.
But they're still in. I think they're in, and it's not right, but I think they're in because of what they did last year.
Oh, obviously. It's a legacy.
So, I mean, Deshaun's not there.
It's a holdover
That's
legacy.
the problem. That's the problem with the playoff committee. We set up the playoff committee because you're supposed to only interpret what they're doing this season.
Which is losing to Syracuse.
Yeah. I don't care if you won the national championship last year. Deshaun's gone.
Right.
And it's a different season.
And you lost to Syracuse.
Yeah. You should not be in the top four at the moment.
I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but they lost to Syracuse.
Okay.
I just want to make sure I get that point across.
So an orange team lost to an orange team.
Correct.
An orange team lost to the orange. Gotcha. But my point is that if you want to leave them in, that's fine. The playoff committee's doing that.
That's going to take care of itself because they're going to have to play Miami in the ACC championship.
Exactly. That's already
those two
set up.
teams will take care of themselves.
But right now, I'm looking at coming out Tuesday. I don't
Yes.
think Miami should be in. I think at this point in time, my top four would be Alabama, Clemson, Wisconsin, and Oklahoma.
I'd probably still keep Miami there and I kick Clemson out. I agree with you on the other three, and I swapped those two ACC teams.
But see, Clemson didn't do anything to hurt themselves this week. I agree with you.
Because they played the Citadel.
I don't think they should be in there to begin with. But I'm saying, as I stand, if I'm sitting in the seat next to Condoleezza Rice, or whoever the fuck's on the playoff. I know she was on there one year. Condoleezza Rice on the playoff committee.
Connie Lingus Rice.
She is irrelevant. Let's go on. Let's move on. I don't want to get off on a tangent on Condoleezza Rice. My point being is if I'm sitting on the playoff committee, Alabama did nothing to hurt themselves. Oklahoma did nothing to hurt themselves. Clemson did nothing to hurt themselves. Miami did.
Right.
Miami's got to go.
Yep. So
Wisconsin's got to get in there. They beat a ranked team this week, and they beat
a
them.
ranked team the last 2 weeks.
Right. I think Miami's got to go. I think the whole point of these rankings these weeks, I mean, we've said it before in the podcast, is to stir up shit to make you and I talk about it. Just you and I, not everybody else.
Right.
Fuck Cowherd. So my point being is that I think if somebody's got to go to start shit this week, it's got to be Miami backing out.
From that rationale, that makes sense.
Wisconsin's got to move at some point. They've shown, what are they, 10-0 now? 11-0?
11-0.
11-0. They're 11-0. They've shown you go 11-0 in the Big Ten, you deserve to be in the playoff.
And the issue with Wisconsin is the committee talks about it, and all the talking heads talk about it, is the strength of schedule. Well, as we all know, these college football schedules are hashed out years in advance.
5 years in advance.
And when they scheduled their non-conference opponents, they scheduled what were supposed to be good opponents. Utah State was good when they scheduled them.
Yeah.
BYU was good when they scheduled them.
Right.
Those two teams are having an off year this year, so that's what's hurting Wisconsin.
Well, then if the Big Ten really has a beef with, Wisconsin not being in there, they need to step up and say, all right, we need to fix this Leaders and Legends division thing.
Well, that's gone.
It is?
Yeah, it's East and West.
Okay, whatever it is, they changed it to East and West. You're saying?
Yeah, so it's true geographical division now. The teams that are in the East are in the East. The teams that are in the West are in the West.
Okay, well, they need to start doing some crossovers now at this point. I understand you got to play the West, but Wisconsin, what do they get? They get Northwestern every year. They get Minnesota every year. They get, Indiana? I'm guessing?
Of course they're going to get Minnesota. That's the longest rivalry in FBS.
I understand that, but it's not a rivalry if one team's just crushing at this point.
It's actually tied.
Is it?
The all-time Minnesota rivalry, which will be the tie will be resolved this weekend. As it's rivalry week, it's Wisconsin, Minnesota.
I stand correct. If anybody's going to educate me on Wisconsin football, it's going to be Rex Chargers.
I am a homer. I've lived in Madison, Wisconsin. I've partied a lot of Badger game days. It's Minnesota, Wisconsin is the longest played rivalry in the FBS. They've played every year since the 1890s, with the exception of 1906, when Theodore Roosevelt canceled all rivalry games that year because of the criminal incidents that were happening around them.
For what? What was it? Just rioting, you mean? Like just general douchebaggery?
Yeah, like students attacking athletes.
In 1906.
1906. Theodore Roosevelt canceled college football rivalry week. Interesting stat. That's the only year they haven't played since they started their rivalry.
This is the Paul Bunyan Axe, right? The Axe
Battle
game?
for Paul Bunyan's Axe. The original trophy was the slab of bacon.
I'd rather play for that.
Yeah.
Was it real bacon or was it like?
It was a piece of wood,
gold-plated bacon,
carved to look like bacon, and then the center there was a football logo that was in the middle, and depending on which way you hung it, it would either read an M or a W. So if Wisconsin wins, you hang it up so it reads W. That got lost in the mid-'40s. And so they introduced the new trophy. The Paul Bunyan's axe has been around since 1948.
All right.
And then each year's game score is recorded on the axe handle.
That's cool.
There's a new axe handle as of about 10 years ago. The
I was
original
going to say,
handle's
that axe handle's eventually got to be finite. You can't put any more on there.
the original axe handle's in the College Football Hall of Fame, and now there's, I think since 2004, I believe, there's a new axe handle. And since 2004, Minnesota has not possessed the axe.
So we're looking at a, 14-year reign?
13,
13-year reign? Well, probably 14. Let's call it what it is.
Yeah, most likely.
Wisconsin.
If the Big Ten has any hope of anything happening, it better be.
I don't have a vested interest in Wisconsin, with the exception of one thing. I want Wisconsin to make the playoff so that I can hear all the announcers on ABC, ESPN say Hornibrook. The name of the quarterback is Hornibrook.
Alex Hornibrook.
Hornibrook. I just want
Sophomore Hornibrook.
I want them to accentuate it like you just did, like Hornibrook drops back and he's taken down. I don't know. I want him to say I want to hear Hornibrook as many times as I can.
Hornibrook goes down
in the December Bowl series. So, anyways, getting back on the playoff track, Wisconsin's. I guess the Big Ten has to start looking at cross rivalries at this point, where you have to play a team every year. Like Florida State plays Miami. They're ACC, they're Atlantic and they're Coastal, but they play each other every year.
Well, so
Wisconsin needs one of those.
Well, they rotate them. So this year Wisconsin had no Ohio State or Penn State, but they had Michigan.
Right.
And last year they had Ohio State and Penn State.
Does it seem like they're just getting them at the wrong times then?
Yeah, it's one of the quirks of the schedule, like scheduling non-conference opponents who happen to have a down year the year you play them.
Yeah, I mean Michigan's
they're kind of victims of that in both ways this way.
Michigan's got 4 losses this year. They're having a down year. So
3. Yeah, they're 8-3.
8-3. So they're having a down year in terms, but that's not Wisconsin's fault.
Yeah.
That's I don't know. I mean, when you're 11-0 or 10, or I think it's 11-0. We said 11-0 in the Big Ten,
and then they're still going to have to play what is about a 99% mathematical certainty to be Ohio State out of the other division in the Big Ten championship game.
Right, unless somehow there's just some
wacky scenario
where Ohio State
does not. Yeah. They have to lose, and then 15 other things have to happen for them not to win the Big Ten East.
Well, they can still lose to Michigan, and Penn State can get in. Am I wrong? Right?
But Penn State has 2 conference losses, including one to Ohio State. So Ohio State wins the tiebreaker head-to-head.
Yeah, you're right.
Have 2 conference losses. Michigan State and Ohio State play. It's weird.
Michigan State got their bells rung.
Yeah, it's a weird convoluted scenario.
I'm still reeling from that loss. God.
Yeah, because when all 3 are tied, then head-to-head is not the tiebreaker and comes down to other factors. So if Ohio State loses to Michigan and a bunch of other stuff happens, then either Penn State or Michigan State could wind up in the Big Ten championship game. Although it's about 100-1 that actually happens.
All this from a conference that can't even get their name right. There's 14 teams in the fucking league.
Yeah, well, there's been at least 11 since 1992 when Penn State joined.
Yeah, the Big Ten has 14 teams. Yeah.
And then the Big Ten had in 2010 Nebraska joined, so it was 12 in 2010.
Yeah, but you couldn't be the Big 12.
But then we picked up some great schools that have really added to the strength of the football conference in Maryland and
Rutgers. Yeah, enjoy that. So you got the Big 10 with 14 teams. You got the Big 12 with 10 teams. So I don't know.
Yeah, do that math.
Yeah, exactly. So okay, my playoff 4 is going to be Alabama, Clemson, Wisconsin, and Oklahoma, or Oklahoma and then Wisconsin. So that's my.
Is that your ranking or is that your prediction?
That's my prediction. I don't think they're going to. I think they're going to leave Miami in, like you said. But my prediction, my ranking would be the 4 I just said. I think the prediction will be Miami stays in, and Washington. Or my prediction will be Wisconsin stays out.
Yeah,
unfortunately
for the rankings, sure.
So, we've got other undefeated teams laying down. What were we going to say?
Well, I was just going to say that which is a role they seem to be fine with.
Yeah, I don't think
we'll just keep winning.
Well, who's the coach up there now? It's
Paul Chryst.
Paul Chryst,
native of Madison, Wisconsin, went to Madison, was an assistant in Madison under Brett Bielema, then went to was head coach at Pittsburgh for years, and then came back to Wisconsin.
Jeez,
I know.
Just keep your finger out of your butt when you say that. You get super excited on that.
Yeah, well, he's like the perfect coach. I mean, he wants to live in Madison. Is from Madison.
Wants to be there forever.
It's his alma mater, and he was already in the coaching system there.
There you go. So let's talk about undefeated teams that are also not getting any love from the playoff committee in the University of Central Florida.
I said the UCF.
Yes.
The UCF Knights had another big win, I believe 49-13 over Temple.
19.
49-19?
45-19.
45-19. Thank you to the crack research staff for that.
Now, so they're they're another one of those teams where it's sitting a little higher in the polls, but a little lower in the committee rankings.
Right, which, I mean, if your intention is to create the best 4 teams, realistically, after 7 or 8, you could throw the group of 5 a little love, because anything 9 and below is not making your playoff.
Right.
So why are 3 lost teams ahead of this squad?
Right.
That's what baffles me. Mississippi State was ahead of them for a long time. USC's got 2 losses. They were ahead of them. Now, granted, don't get me wrong. I get why they do it. The best team, if you line up UCF versus USC on a neutral field, USC would be the favorite. I get it. I understand. But for a sense of just giving a group of 5 school a little bit of sense of hope and false promise, we know, as fans, we know they're not making it.
This is the FBS playoffs, not the Power 5 playoff.
Yeah, if you want to be a Power 5, they need to do something about splitting that, which would be, I think, catastrophic, because I think a lot of those players play in those markets.
Saban started to hint at it. There was a quote from him yesterday.
But a team like UCF, if they decide to make a Power 5, collegiate, athletic, blah, 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 teams like UCF have to be considered for bringing up. I mean, I'd get rid of Rutgers. Yeah, they had a good run with Schiano and Ray Rice, but they haven't been relevant in 10 years.
Yeah.
So they got to go. They're not basketball relevant. They're not anything. The only thing they're relevant to basketball is their coach getting fired for fucking screaming at people. So,
grab people and flinging chairs.
I mean, UCF has been on a program on the rise for 10 years now. I mean, so I think that if you're talking about making a Power 5 conference, teams like that, teams like Memphis in basketball and football, they've got to be the ones that you're actually siphoning up to your
Boise
new Power.
State.
Well, Boise State's already there.
Well, I mean,
not officially in the rankings, but they would already be a team that would go. TCU's already gone to the Big 12. Those teams are already well established. Although with Chris Peterson not being there, they look like they're starting to slide back, but they're still relevant.
There's programs who have had some bowl success recently, like, you look at Northern Illinois out of the MAC,
Yeah, well, you take this one, UNLV. We sit here in Las Vegas. Great basketball program. Football, not so much. Do you take them with you for the basketball revenue in the Power 5 conference?
That's a question to be asked.
There's a lot of those teams. I mean, Kentucky football. Do they belong in Power 5? Basketball, yes. Football, not so much. So, I mean, there's a lot of...
That's part of that super strong SEC football schedule.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Kentucky's in there. Kentucky, Tennessee, all them. Yeah. But, that's a lot of the teams. I mean, Duke's in the ACC, obviously not because of football.
Right.
There's a lot of those teams.
Duke was relevant in football, in the mid-'90s for a second.
Yeah, under Spurrier before he jetted. But that's what I'm saying. You can talk about having this Power 5 conference. If Saban's talking about football only, I can see. But.
Yeah, it could be like it used to be with hockey. I mean, prior to a couple of years ago, the Big Ten was not a hockey conference.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you do have to segregate it by sport. Maybe the Big Ten stays the Big Ten for something, and maybe it's take teams out of it for other things. Maybe it's one of those things where you have to maybe look at different avenues besides just traditional conference alignment.
I feel like that affects too much in the terms of money, though, for a lot of these schools.
Yeah.
Well, I don't
take a major reworking of television deals. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Or the age-old question is eliminate conferences in general, which you can still have regional rivalries and regional matchups, which generally make up most of your schedule. But I think we get a lot of bigger games then.
And then we look at Notre Dame. They're not a Group of 5 or a Power 5.
Right, they can do what they want.
Yeah, exactly.
But they still choose to kind of cling on to a conference. In basketball, I believe they play in the ACC. They play primarily ACC.
Football, they don't. They still claim their independent status in football.
Well, because they use that to their advantage.
Obviously.
Because all they have to do is be halfway good, and they're going to get love from the
Exactly.
they're going to get love from the press. Because look at this year, they were only halfway good. I think they were a little overrated to begin with, even before they played Miami. But they were still a playoff team.
Yeah, they were still. I mean, their only loss prior to Miami was a 1-point loss to Georgia, so it wasn't like they were.
But who did they beat? They didn't beat anybody of relevance.
Who did they beat?
Exactly.
They beat Michigan State.
Not very good. Has shown to be not very good. They beat USC, who has shown to be just average. Their best win is USC, I guess, right?
Yeah, well, USC is better than average, but yeah, that's their best win.
Yeah. So, that's my point. Their best win is against a 2-loss team that's not sniffing a playoff appearance. There are two chances against the playoff appearance.
Yeah, the Pac-12 is the conference that's out for sure. For sure.
Oh, yeah, there's not a chance. Pac-12 is out. So, all right, well, let's look at that. So, if you have Alabama stays in, runs the table. You have Clemson stays in, runs the table. You have Wisconsin.
Which eliminates Miami. Clemson running the table eliminates Miami.
Right. So, you have Wisconsin stays in, runs the table, and Oklahoma. So, there's your 4. Your Big 12, your Big 10, your ACC and SEC. So then, the Pac-12 stays out.
Yep.
I don't think they have.
Obviously.
Yeah, they don't have anybody right now, anyways.
Washington was everyone's darling at the beginning of the season. We find out they're
Exposed.
pretender. Yeah.
So let's get back to UCF. If they run the table, they win the AAC. They got USF left in a big rivalry game on Black Friday.
They could enjoy the Fiesta Bowl.
Is that it? I mean, is that?
That's for whatever formerly big bowl game that they'll be sent to.
But this goes back to my question: is that the playoff committee is supposed to establish their decisions based on this year. So UCF runs the table this year, plays in the Fiesta Bowl, blah blah blah. They win it. They have a great year. Now they've run the table next year, or they start off in the top 10 next year, and they lose early, but then they run. Does the playoff committee start considering? Oh well, considering they only have one loss in the last 2 years.
The legacy bias will always be inherent in these rankings.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is that does at any point does a group of 5 school ever get a legacy bias? No.
Potentially, like if something like that occurs, if they run the table this year, go to a big bowl game and win it, then maybe they do get a little more love next year.
But the problem is that the teams on their schedule in the AAC, like you said,
which they should get more love now immediately. But
that's what I'm saying.
They probably could get more love
immediately. They should get the love because they are undefeated. They have played exactly what's on their schedule. They've beaten 2 ranked teams when they were ranked.
Yep.
So I mean,
and they're a member of the Football Bowl subdivision. So
yeah, they're a member of the FBS. I think that. I'm not saying you have to put them in the playoff right now, but I think they should be a top 10 team in the playoffs eyes. And I don't think
I concur.
I don't think they're getting that kind of love. So with looking at that situation, I think I could be crazy, but in the institution of the playoff committee, UCF's the best team from the group of 5 that we've ever had. I could be wrong. The playoff committee's only been around for 4 years.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, in the 4 years of the existence of the playoff committee, for sure. Are they the best team from the group of 5 conferences to ever exist? I don't know if I go that far.
I mean, TCU's always been in the Big 12 since. Boise hasn't, since Chris Peterson left, 3 years ago? Boise hasn't been what Boise used to be.
That's what I mean. Boise had the great year with the Fiesta Bowl win.
Yeah, but that was back in, 11, 12?
Yeah.
Back in the Jared Zabransky years?
It's hard to say.
This UCF team.
But they're up there for sure. They're definitely the best since the playoff formats existed.
This UCF team might be the best since the last UCF team that won the Fiesta Bowl. That was the first year of the playoff, or was it the last? No, that was 2013. That was the last year. Last year of the BCS. So forget that last statement. Scratch that from the record. D-Ray, you'll update that in editing.
Yeah.
So I think UCF's got to be the best group of 5 team in the last 4 years to make their case. And they're what? What are they going to come out as? Like 14 this week? They're probably going to come out.
Yeah, they should definitely be higher for sure.
So I don't know. The question I have bouncing off that is, if this is the best product we've shown in the group of 5, and if they finish the season undefeated, does the group of 5 ever have a shot? Ever?
Not in
a single calendar year.
Not in a 4-team playoff. 8-team, yes. 4 teams, no.
Well, in the 8-team, and Anthony and I discussed this last week, in the 8 teams, I think it should be the Power 5, 1 group of 5 guy, and 2 at-large bids. What are your thoughts?
So you're saying automatic seeding for the Power 5 conferences?
Automatic seeding for Power 5. A group of 5 gets the 6, and you can seed them however you want. Like the committee can seed them if
1 through 8.
Yeah, 1 through 8. Well, no, the at-large should be 7 and 8, in my opinion.
Well, you probably.
If you can't win your division, you should be an at-large.
That would seem to be.
So 1 through 6 can be seeded however you want based on your determination. 7 and 8 can be at-large bids. I think the top 4 should get home games.
What if there's a year when there's not a strong group of 5 team, and you're still giving them an automatic bid?
Well, we do it in the NCAA basketball tournament. We give a bid to every single conference.
Then maybe we should give a bid to every single conference for football.
Well, see, I think you've opened up something here.
Conference champions. And then the Power 5s get the first round.
So how far do we go down? Sunbelt?
Do it.
Sunbelt gets a playoff appearance? Yep. Here comes Louisiana Lafayette.
Louisiana Monroe, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Well, I would think Troy would win the Sunbelt. Oh, my God. Troy, Louisiana Lafayette all just slipped into this podcast.
Yeah, what happens, it'd be hard to say you give a group of 5 team an automatic bid if there's not a good group of 5 team. That, let's say UCF is out that year. They had some crappy year, whatever.
Sure.
If no one else steps up to the plate, then who are you giving this automatic bid to?
Well, I think that's where the playoff committee comes in. The playoff committee is paid to make these decisions.
Yes, yeah. I kind of like your idea, and I kind of dislike it. I don't know.
I'm not crazy about it. I'm just throwing out things to see if Condoleezza and the boys can get something to stick.
I would just say, if I was doing an 8-team playoff, I would make it a little looser, and it would be the 5 Power 5 conference champions and 3 at-large bids, of which a good group of 5 team should be one.
So now you're kind of holding their hand and making them pick one.
Yeah.
But if there's not a good one, that's the thing. If
so like
every week
this year,
every week they think UCF's not a good one. So I don't know. What do you say?
In a year like this, UCF would be in an 18 playoff format.
And see, the problem is UCF should be playing USF, and they should be ranked right now too. The problem is they slipped up against Houston and had a bad game,
Yep.
and they got destroyed for it. Went all the way from 14 to knocked out of the top 25. So that's the problem. I mean, I understand they lost to Houston. Houston's not a great team this year, but to drop 11 plus spots is crazy to me. I mean, there's still a college football team that you have to put on there. I mean,
yes and no.
Iowa wasn't.
I can go either way on that.
If they lost to their division bottom feeder, I mean, they're an AAC middle of the road team.
Yeah.
So it's not like they're the bottom feeder. And there's bottom feeders in the other conferences too. I mean,
Oh, for sure.
Kentucky, I can go on. I can find Oregon State. I can find bottom feeders in any conference.
I love that Oregon State's a bottom feeder.
Why's that?
Their previous coach who got canned or whatever this year was Gary Anderson, who decided to leave Wisconsin for Oregon State. What a retarded move.
It seems that way.
And now, where is he now? No longer there.
It seems to be he made the wrong move. But you got Paul Christ, your little homer guy, so you worked out.
Loving it.
So, I don't know. It's the age-old question for anybody who roots for a group of 5 school is when are we ever going to get, the Boise State made sense because they put it together for the better part of a decade. Cut that out.
Yep.
The Boise State thing makes sense because they put it together for a better part of a decade.
Right.
So I understand that. But if we're looking at a playoff committee and their job is to look at each individual season.
And each individual team inside of that season.
Exactly.
You have to break it down into micro.
And who they play and where they play and when they play and what they're ranked when they play. And I don't think that's actually happening for a lot of the teams.
Obviously not. There's just a multitude of reasons you could list off. The inherent legacy bias, the bias against the group of 5 schools, just because of size of program, market size, revenue that they generate.
Well, I don't know if this is still the case, but I know a couple weeks back I was reading a UCF Insider article, and according to the BCS standings, they'd have been number 3.
Oh, using the old BCS computers?
Using the old BCS computers with the Sager and the Harris and everything, they'd have been number 3.
Yeah.
Which still doesn't put them in the BCS championship, but it puts them in the playoff.
Right.
So it's like, what are you guys seeing that the computers clearly, that now we're looking at eye tests and we're looking at opinions. So now, I may be just developing this opinion as I speak. I feel like the BCS might have been a better system.
I'm not necessarily
to develop a playoff.
To pick the best 4 teams.
To pick the best 2 teams, it may not have always been the case, but I feel like
because 2 teams is just too finite.
Right. Because you can pick 2 teams, or you can pick.
There's
8.
always going to be a viable third place who kind of gets the shaft.
Right. But if you pick a viable 4 teams, or if you pick a viable 8 teams, the computers are going to get them right.
Yes.
So that to me is just. It seems. I don't know. I might have just developed that opinion right now, but to me it seems like maybe bring back the BCS and the playoff and merge them together. You might have
exactly.
You're never gonna have a perfect system, but that might be as close to perfect.
BCS into a playoff.
BCS playoff rankings. So we'll see what happens. NCAA, if you're listening.
I kind of like that. Of all your ideas you postulated today, I like that one the best.
I'm just getting started. So
that's my vocab word of the day too. Postulated.
So, D-Ray, what do you think? Obviously, I went to UCF, so I have a little bit of homerage on this topic.
Oh, that's where that comes from.
I saw. What do you think? If a team goes undefeated in the entire regular season, should they have a shot to play in the playoff, no matter what conference they play in?
Absolutely. These kids worked hard for it. You got to show them love.
Now, let me ask you, and I'll ask this to both of you. If they decide to do something along those lines, where they say, if you go undefeated, or if we use the BCS rankings to determine playoff teams, does that make recruiting harder for the Power 5?
It probably does, which is probably why it'll never happen.
Yeah, probably true. Yeah.
Follow the money.
So we talked about NCAA playoffs. I think we all kind of agree. Maybe there's another change in the system that should come along. So
I do like the idea of the BCS playoff. The more I even think about it, just sitting here stewing on it, I like it.
BCS turn into a playoff. I think we're onto something. So
we'll cut that and ship it to the people that need to hear it.
Yeah, we'll send it to Kansas City. Are they still in Kansas City?
I don't know.
Because I don't know what they're not doing their jobs. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
So what else do we have? We have the NFL, which I think the house had to have a good take on this one because it was an interesting games.
Being out and about around town on Saturday night and playing poker, everyone talking sports betting. Saints. Everyone's firing huge money on the Saints. Saints minus 7.5. And then overnight it moved from 7.5 to 9. And people poured more money on it. And then they
won in overtime.
Barely tied the game and then won it in overtime.
Well, I don't know if anybody listened to the podcast, but if you did listen to the podcast, you ignored all of the things that everybody else said, and you took the Washington Redskins at 9.5 because you're welcome on that one.
Oh, when that line moved that much late? For sure. For sure.
It was 9.5 on Thursday when we recorded the podcast.
And then it went down.
Did it go down again?
Yeah, then it sprung back up overnight. It was 7.5 Saturday night, and it was 9 on Sunday
I would have still
morning.
liked it at 7. I like Kirk Cousins. I mean, and he says you like that. I like that.
Yeah.
That guy's going to get paid, dude. That guy's going to get paid. But anyways, you're right. I mean, we had the Saints with a situation where they didn't cover, but they still won, which was an incredible game the way they came back. They were down, 31-15 or something?
Yeah, it was. The last touchdown was just amazing.
Yeah, and then the 2-point conversion to Kamara, and that's a kick in the gut for Jay Gruden. But what else you have? You had the Chargers game, which just got out of hand early with Nathan Peterman and the 5 interceptions in the first half.
Yeah.
And Tyrod Taylor's benching lasted 2.5 quarters. So I mean, they started this season kind of blowing up their team, trading away Watkins, and trading away a lot of their guys, and McCoy was the only real weapon left. But then they started to win some games, and then now we have a game like this. I mean, Do you roll with the Nathan Peterman experience, or do you just let Tyrod kind of play his way into a contract for somebody else next season?
Yeah, that's a tough question. It's
because that was a bad showing by Peterman.
Yeah,
one of the interceptions wasn't his fault, but he still had 4.
Right. Yeah,
he still had
5
4
on the stat sheet, 4 of which were his fault.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where do they believe he can be the guy?
He's a 5th-round rookie, so I mean, throwing him into that situation on the West Coast probably wasn't the most ideal situation.
Obviously.
So I don't know. My first thought was he's got to get another chance. And I don't know. Who do they play next week? They play at home next week? No, they play in Kansas City. So good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck with your second chance. But you got to roll and see what you got because clearly they're punting. I think they're punting this season. So you got to roll with Peterman.
Which is unfortunate after a good start.
Yeah, I mean they had wins against Atlanta and no, they lost to New Orleans, but they had a good win against Atlanta. Mm-hmm. But that's okay. I mean, well, you had a nice start, even a surprising start considering what you did in the off season. But that's all right. Well, let's move on to a couple games of interest that I thought should have gone differently, and that's Baltimore at Green Bay.
Yes.
When's the last time you're a Green Bay guy? When's the last time Green Bay got shut out at home? I don't care who the quarterback is. It couldn't have been under Rodgers or Favre, right?
No. Yes. Maybe. Patriots at Green Bay 2006.
We'll have to get the crack research staff on that.
The first one that come to my mind is a possible shutout at home.
The last time Green Bay got shut out at home in Lambeau.
New England at Green Bay in 2006. That's the one that it was. If it wasn't a shutout, they scored like 3 points. That's the first game that comes into my mind and then, obviously it was under Favre. Prior to that, I mean, you got to probably go pre-Favre and go back into the Don Majkowski, Anthony Dilweg, Randy Wright era.
Yeah, you lost me
to find out
at all those. I don't go past the Favre era. I don't know much until you hit Bart Starr, and even then I don't know much. But
Majkowski was the guy that Favre replaced. So
okay. So what is the atmosphere in Titletown right now with that happening? I understand, obviously, it's Brett Hundley. It's not a real season anymore, but that doesn't feel good. Baltimore has 3 shutouts this year.
And the problem
and they're not good.
And Baltimore's defense is not the Baltimore defense of 5 years.
Right, that's what I'm saying. They got 3 shutouts this year.
Terrell Suggs is still a good player, and they still have some good players, but it's not the defense of 5 years. No, the issue with Green Bay, and it has to come from the top down. This is the roster that Ted Thompson put together. And then when Rodgers got hurt, McCarthy said, we're going with Hundley and Callahan. We're going with the quarterbacks in the roster. He brings up the Kaepernick name, and he's like, we're going with the quarterbacks on the roster. Well, the quarterbacks on the roster aren't up to snuff. So that's either on the GM for putting them on the roster, or on the coach for not getting them ready to play at the level in which you need to play to succeed in the NFL. So I think this really is on Ted Thompson and Mike McCarthy for leaving the cupboard a little bare in Green Bay. And whatever you think of his politics, Colin Kaepernick should have been at the Don Hudson Center in Green Bay about 3 weeks ago. And he should have been getting a crash course in the Packers offense while Hundley started a couple of games. And then you can put him in because he's clearly a more talented quarterback than Brett Hundley.
Well, I don't think anybody disagreed with that, but I think, is Lambeau the kind of demographic in terms of fan base where they just don't want to bring that in, though?
I'm sure that plays a part of it.
I mean, they're definitely a more liberal state, but I mean, I don't know if they're necessarily a more liberal fan base.
And no, I mean, the state isn't liberal, especially in Green Bay. Now, Green Bay is a pretty conservative town. Politically, if you look at it that way, yeah.
The fans still own the team, right? I mean, if I'm not mistaken, in a sense.
Yeah, the community owns the team. Yeah. There's.
So does the community make that decision?
No. All the powers vested in the organization are Mark Murphy, the president, and Ted Thompson, the GM. Fans do have voting rights, so they can vote on the board and vote for the president and whatnot. But as far as the actual operation of the football team,
and it's too late now to look at them, right? I mean, they've already made their case.
It should have happened, but it didn't. And now, what's the point?
Right.
I mean, technically, you're still alive for the division of the playoffs, but it's not going to happen.
It's very bleak in the sense.
And then, even if you do, what do you scrape together and get in the playoffs at 9-7, and then try to bring Rodgers back and risk more injury, like they did in 2013? I don't like that either.
Yeah, no, this season's a lost cause at this point, for all intents and purposes. So, does this season cost McCarthy his job?
It might, and that's kind of what I was getting to when I said it kind of starts from the top. It might cost the whole regime. It might cost Ted Thompson and Mike McCarthy their jobs.
That's crazy to think that you have a Hall of Fame quarterback who goes down, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, I know the system. If Brady went down right now, it'd be the same thing in New England. And if Manning went down in Denver, I think without Osweiler, it would have been the same thing in Denver. And in Indianapolis, it was shown that a team can lose, that a manager can lose his job when that team is not realistically ready to still compete without their star player. That happens in every sport, though.
The Bulls were competitive when Jordan did his quote-unquote retirement for a year.
They were competitive, but they weren't they weren't championship caliber.
But they were competitive.
The Packers are
not competitive.
The NFL's a little different than the NBA, though. There's 5 guys on a team. There's a lot more percentage of impact per guy than there is in 53-man rosters.
And that's what I mean. I think you're exactly glorifying my point. Rodgers is one guy out of 53. Jordan was one guy out of 5.
Right, but Rodgers' percentage of impact is greater, in my opinion, than Jordan's percentage of impact on the Bulls.
I don't know if I go that far.
Maybe not Jordan, but okay, let's look at...
It's just amazing how much...
Let's look at a guy as Steph Curry. I think Rodgers' impact on the Packers is bigger than Steph Curry's impact on the Warriors. You take Steph Curry off the Warriors, I think they can still win an NBA title.
Well, yeah, because they still have 2 other superstars.
Right. The Packers don't. Clay Matthews is a superstar in the sense of marketing, but he's not a superstar in the sense of an actual NFL player.
He was out this week, too, with an injury. It's amazing how many flaws that Rodgers' great ability covers up.
Absolutely. He's a player who transcends the game, and he may go down as one of the best of all time.
See, now, the thing with
those don't come along. Brett Hundley's never going to be Aaron Rodgers. But that's the same case for 29 other quarterbacks in the league. Right. Now. With the exception of maybe Drew Brees and Brady.
Right. No, I agree with that. But
you lose a guy like that.
But you can still have someone serviceable.
But
and Brett Hundley is not serviceable.
So what are they, 1-4 since he left? Since he went down?
They beat the Bears, which doesn't take... Even Brett Hundley can beat the Bears.
Right. But what I'm saying is Brett Hundley has sat back for, 2-3 years now?
Yeah.
Hasn't had game experience in a real sense.
Yeah.
I mean, the team's not good. You're right. He hides a lot of flaws. Brett Hundley might be actually a decent quarterback, but that team is not good.
No.
So his talent level doesn't mask an inferior product like Aaron Rodgers does.
Correct.
So I don't know if that, going back to my original point, I see what you're saying about Mike McCarthy might lose his job. I don't think that he should because of this.
I think he should because the rest of the team isn't up to snuff.
What's up to snuff?
I was a McCarthy defender for a long time.
You're in a pretty good division. If you lose a guy like Aaron Rodgers, I don't think you can compete in that division any year.
Except for the year that they won it when they lost Aaron Rodgers. 2013. When Aaron Rodgers broke his other collarbone.
Yeah, but who was in quarterback that one?
Seneca Wallace started one game. Scott Tolzien started a couple of games. And then Matt Flynn came back. Because
so
the Raiders realized they paid him too much money.
So Mike McCarthy gets no pass in this.
No,
No,
I really don't think so. I think
fair enough.
this is kind of an icing on the cake. Like the teams,
I think they've been an underachieving team for a long time, minus the Super Bowl. To be
Yeah.
honest with you, I think they've been that team that should be Packers Patriots every year in the Super Bowl, with the exception of a couple of Peyton Manning years. But you're right. I think that team should be like the Patriots. They should be probably around the NFC Championship every year, and it's a bust.
which they typically are, but they should have gotten to the big game more than
just twice or once. They get once.
Rodgers. Yeah,
He's only been once, right?
they've been to 3 NFC Championship games, 1 Super Bowl under McCarthy/Rodgers. Well, actually 4 NFC Championship games under McCarthy because of Brett Favre's last year. They were in the NFC Championship game as well.
Did we get that crack research stat?
Absolutely. The eerie thing is it's been exactly 11 years to the date when they were shut out at Lambeau against the Patriots, 35-0 in Week 11.
2006. Called
2006,
it. Nailed
yep.
it.
Right on. Nailed it.
Pulled that one out of the old memory banks.
That is wild. But I mean, like you said, shutouts at Lambeau, we're having to go back and look at, stats. That doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, the game was atrocious, and I'm a Packer fan, and I watched more of the Detroit, Chicago, and Washington, New Orleans game than I did of the Packers game yesterday.
and I don't blame
It
you.
was just the product on the field is hardly watchable, and Baltimore's not very good either. So it wasn't like you could watch like one good team, one bad team. It was 2 pretty bad teams.
I can imagine. Yeah, that's low quality NFL football. But
It started out promising. First drive, Hundley takes him down, makes a couple of good throws. They're inside. They're first and goal with under 2 minutes gone of the game, and he throws a pick in the end zone. And it was all downhill after that.
But was it as low quality as Jacksonville and Cleveland?
It may have been lower. Cleveland scored points.
Cleveland scored. You're right. Cleveland did have a
Yes,
backdoor
they did.
touchdown.
Cleveland did not get shut out at home. Green
Jackson.
Bay got shut out at home. Cleveland did not.
A lot of people liked Cleveland on that situation. Jacksonville, I liked them to cover. I didn't touch the game, but Jacksonville didn't look very pretty as well either in that situation.
Yeah, they didn't look that great, but I'll take an ugly 7-3 team any day.
Now, are they? Anthony and I have a bet. I think they're going to win the division over Tennessee. He's got Tennessee. I think, obviously, with Tennessee losing to Pittsburgh,
I like your side.
I like my side a little better. They still got to play.
I liked your side before Sunday, and I liked your side more after Sunday.
Yeah, so I'm feeling good about Jacksonville's win. I don't really think there's much to recap on that other than you're right. An ugly 7-3 team is still 7-3. But Kansas City, whew. What the fuck?
Somebody shot the bed.
Yeah, I mean, Andy Reid coming off a bye is undefeated against the spread and undefeated in straight up, and then you lose to a 1-8 team that has no identity and has no receivers because Sterling Shepard didn't even play in this game, has no running game, has an below average defense, and a quarterback who's pretty much given up on the season, and you lose. You don't even score a touchdown.
In Arrowhead.
No, it was in the Meadowlands.
It was?
Yeah.
Oh, I was thinking it was in Kansas City. Never mind.
No, but the point being is, I don't care if it was in fucking Timbuktu, you don't lose that game. You don't lose that game. It was the only double-digit spread of the week. I took the Giants, but I did not think the Giants would win. That would have been a hell of a money line to pick.
Yeah.
It had to be in the 6s, right? Had to be 6s or 7s?
Oh, for sure.
God damn.
For sure.
I wish I would have sprinkled a little, but. Alex Smith started out this season, what were they, 5-0? And they're 1-4 since. And he's starting to look more like the Alex Smith of old. Is it Mahomes time, or are they still they're still division leaders, but I don't know if it's necessarily.
That division's having a down year for sure.
Right. But is it too risky to put Mahomes in at this point?
Yes. You have to stick with Smith at this point.
Yeah.
Because you should still win the division and get to the playoffs. I don't.
Are you a
Is Mahomes
threat?
going to do that?
Yeah. I mean,
Can you get you there?
I think they need.
Even if you're not a threat, you need the playoff revenue.
Sure. And then you can start. You can start
even-
looking at Alex Smith, departing, and then start looking at the Pat Mahomes
Right.
experience.
Then you look long term, but yeah, that's kind of the unfortunate financial reality is even if you have next to no shot to do anything in the playoffs, getting to the playoffs is huge for a multitude of reasons.
Right.
One of them being financial.
All right. So Alex Smith is still the answer.
It's got to be for now.
Right.
Unless he completely shits the bed.
But they've looked poor. I mean, this is just
But, yeah,
this is the icing on the cake. I mean, they lose 12-9 to the New York Giants, and now they've got Buffalo and the Jets next. They can't lose those. They got to win those games.
You would hope.
It sounds easy.
Well, yeah. I mean, it sounds easy, but there's no Mark.
Those are
That's because
games.
Mark Sanchez isn't running onto the field anytime for the New York Jets.
Those are conference games that you have to win. Yeah,
Yeah, 2 conference games, and they got Oakland and the Chargers and Denver to finish up the season. So, I mean, I think they've got to get to 8-4 at that point because the way they look right now, they can be beat by any team in their division, and LA is on the rise. It sounds weird saying LA.
Which LA?
The Chargers. We're talking about the AFC West.
Okay.
It does sound weird to say LA. For either team, it sounds weird to say LA, but especially for the Chargers.
The funny thing is, I've been calling them San Diego for the better part of 6 months now, and now I finally call them LA, and it's a little weird.
Yeah. Ironically, they started as the LA Chargers.
They did for 1 season.
Yeah. 1960, inaugural AFL season.
See, I just need this guy's like a fucking walking almanac. So, all right, well, let's talk about New England and Oakland. We talked about Oakland. The game was in Mexico City, if you want to call it a game.
Estadio
Azteca.
which is a huge freaking venue. It's like the Wembley Stadium of Mexico City.
Yeah, it was a big stadium, but and Oakland filled most of it, but they definitely didn't fill it on the field. They got destroyed. Is this just a well-oiled machine? I mean, now Brady, obviously the first game against Kansas City, you can use whatever excuse in the book. There was a hangover. Kansas City was on fire.
Yeah, Kansas City looked great. New England played bad that day.
Yeah, and obviously they had that game against Carolina. A couple of penalties could have gone the other way, but they've just been an oiled machine.
Yeah, it's one of the great things in the NFL is the level of competition is so close. It's not much at all between the New York Giants and the New England Patriots. The strength of the talent, these are the best football players in the world.
Right.
So everyone has an off day, and, as cliched as it is, any given Sunday, any team can beat any other team. So, yeah, you go back, and then over a 16-game sample size, it starts to average out, and you start to see the real quality of the team.
Right. I mean, you
So
see...
New England had a bad day against Kansas City. Kansas City was looked good. Now both teams are kind of regressing to their mean. Which for New England means upshot.
75% victory.
And Kansas City means down.
Right. You're exactly right. I mean, over the course of the sample size, a team that wins 75% of their games is consistently going to be one of the better teams in the league.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's been New England for the better part of 18 years.
Right.
So there's not really much to say here. That the offense had a great game. Defense played well. David Carr was on his back a lot, and there was just nothing positive for Oakland at that point.
Yeah, it was pretty abysmal for the Raiders.
I will say the one negative for Oakland at this point in time is that they showed a shot of Bob Kraft. They showed back-to-back shots of the owners. Bob Kraft and his son John were sitting in the owner's box. They were having a chat. They were dressed up real nice, ties and everything. And then they flipped right over to Mark Davis. Is it Mark Davis?
Yeah.
Flipped right over to Mark Davis. They had a bad camera angle looking up diagonally at him. He's looking like this, and he's eating popcorn looking at the game, and he looks like Chucky got fucked up in a fire.
Yeah, and he's got that weird bowl cut thing he's got going
that doesn't help.
Is that actual hair?
But it was like almost like Jekyll and Hyde of NFL franchises. I mean, I keep going to call him Al. Mark Davis has been getting so much shit for everything, for the move, the way they handled Oakland, the stadium deal, blah, blah, blah. And then, you obviously have the franchise where it sets the pinnacle, the gold standard of the Crafts, where they're suit and tie and everything, even down in the, an away game. It was just, to me, it was a very telling depiction of both the game and the franchises.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good analogy there, buddy.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I've been stewing on that one since Sunday night. So, a couple of irrelevant games, Arizona and Houston, whatever. Houston won that game.
Yeah,
Peterson had another bad game, which Anthony and I talked about last podcast. He's continuing that trend of shit game, or great game, shit game, great game, shit game, great game, shit game. So this was his shit game.
On schedule.
Yeah, right on cue. Who started him in the fantasy? This guy.
So you talked about the trend.
I didn't have any other options, dude.
And then you started him against the trend.
I didn't have any other options, man. I really didn't.
I realized that's a great piece of information. I will ignore this great piece of information.
We did that 2 weeks ago, too. When the Packers and the Bears played, we both go, I don't see how the Bears could lay 5 points against anybody. They should not be laying 5 points. You should take the Packers. And then both of our fast five picks, we both took the Bears. I just thought maybe I could buck exactly what I was saying. We were, that's why we're the squares, right?
You're just playing devil's advocate.
That's why we're the Vegas squares. Cincinnati and Denver. Denver's lost 6 in a row, 7 in a row now. Cincinnati.
Yeah, they've looked horrible since the bye week.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cincinnati won a big game on the road for whatever you want to call that, but that may help Andy Dalton. Is Marvin Lewis?
Is it going to help Marvin Lewis?
Marvin Lewis got to be out of there.
You think?
Well, I've been thinking for 15 years now.
He's the second longest tenured coach in the league behind.
That's my point.
Belichick.
You say you think, but I don't know. Every time you think he's done, he went 7-9 this year. He's done. He's got a team that's supposed to go to the Super Bowl. He went 4-12.
It's Belichick, Marvin Lewis, McCarthy. Those are the longest tenured coaches in the NFL.
Yep, exactly. So I don't know. I think he's done. He should be done. He should have been done.
Yeah.
We'll see him next year.
Same old Bengals.
L.A. Rams in Minnesota was a really good game.
Yeah.
Or so we thought it was supposed to be. Minnesota just ran it down their throats. Are they the best team in the NFC?
No.
No.
Eagles.
You think so?
The Eagles,
Yes.
9-1.
Well, I know by record. We can look at the records.
I think the Eagles are a more complete team than Minnesota.
See, I don't know if I agree. I think their defense and their secondary is still suspect. I could be wrong, but I think on a neutral field, it's Case Keenum versus Carson Wentz. That's the big thing.
I don't think the Minnesota defense is as good as they've appeared
Because
the last few weeks.
There's been an illusion.
There has been an illusion.
You don't think? I mean, they played well against. They played decent against Kirk Cousins. He had some garbage time, but I mean, obviously they got Brett Hundley because of Aaron Rodgers' injury.
Mm-hmm.
This week they got Jared Goff, who's supposed to be on the rise, who's been playing well. Now, I said it last week.
West Coast team coming east. There's that.
Right,
It's
I
in
agree.
Minnesota.
But
Play that game in L.A.
I think Jared Goff's. I think the Rams' success so far has been smoke and mirrors. I've said that. I've been very adamant in saying that.
I think they're overachieving. I think they're a good team. I think they're overachieving.
Right. I think their success right now. I mean, they've got the victory against the Giants and shit like that.
Like coming into this week, they're 7-2, but they're like a 7-2 team in a 5-4 team's body.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense.
I think they're a winning team, but I think yes, they were a little overhyped.
They'll be dangerous next year, and as the Legion of Boom and all those guys.
It's good to see them.
Start to.
It's enjoyable to see the Rams actually be good.
Well, they need to be. They're getting ready to go into that new stadium.
Yeah, I mean, after having not been good since the Kurt Warner era.
Yeah.
And prior to that, they
The Mark Bolger era was okay.
Yeah,
It wasn't Super Bowl, but
yeah.
what did they have after that? They had like what was his name?
Rams starting quarterbacks. Even my brain can't pull these out right now.
I'm gonna pull one. I'm gonna pull one before the end of the show. I can't think of it.
But between,
Actually, I think Case Keenum was one of them.
I think so.
Actually, ironically, of all things, I think
I can take it back to Jim Everett. That's
yeah, Case Keenum was one of them. So there you go. So I hit my quota for the day of Rams starting quarterbacks over the last
Good job.
15 years. So I'm gonna have a cookie after the show.
Oh, yeah.
Philadelphia and Dallas wasn't really a contest. It was in the beginning. It was 9-7 at halftime.
halftime, yeah.
And then Philadelphia just gave the big middle finger to the Star and put 30 up in the second half.
And that's why I still think they're probably the best team.
Yeah, I think somebody's got to. I think on the road, and Dallas is a different story. Dallas, man, is Ezekiel Elliott worth that much, or is Tyron Smith really more of the issue here?
Both. I think it's a little bit of both. Elliott, just because of the consistency that he provides.
I mean, it's not like Alfred Morris and McFadden McFadden hasn't really been playing, but Alfred Morris isn't a slouch.
He's not a slouch.
He's not Ezekiel Elliott.
Right. He's not a slouch for sure, but yeah, it's just the level that Elliott brings, it becomes, it's a big difference between, like 4.7 a carry and 4.1 a carry.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like much, but over the course of a drive, that's a first down or not,
Yeah.
It's one of those things where that little bit of production means a big deal to the overall health of the team.
Fair enough.
One of those where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So even though you have the Alfred Morris part,
he's not a good collective of the whole.
Correct.
So we got the Monday night game, and D-Ray, what's the spread on that game right now?
1.
1 in favor of Seattle.
Seattle, yep.
So that line's actually been moving
it's moving
down. It's actually moving. It was 2.5 for the Seahawks, now going back down close to even. I think it was at even yesterday or this morning, because I posted it on Twitter. If you check us out on Twitter at Vegas Squares, I believe I posted it at even when I saw it. So now it's gone back up to 1. 45.5 is the total. What are your thoughts on tonight's game?
I don't know. Is there a more disappointing team in the league this year than the Falcons?
No.
Seattle might be.
This is kind of a toss-up, maybe. Yeah.
We got no Richard Sherman. You got no Cam Chancellor. You got a busted up Russell Wilson. You got no Dwayne Brown. That's just for the Seahawks.
Right. Yeah, it's just one side of that coin. I don't like touching either side of this thing.
Yeah, it's.
I'm rolling with the Falcons tonight because I think they need the win more, and I think they're the better team on paper. But going into CenturyLink Field is going to be tough. But I think now they can throw. I think their best weapon in the secondary right now for the Legion of Boom is Shaquille Griffin, UCF, by the way.
Oh, jeez.
But I'm actually putting him down while propping him up. He's the best weapon in the Legion of Boom.
Your backhanded compliment.
A rookie third-round pick is the Legion of Boom's best weapon right now.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think Matt Ryan, I think they're starting to get a little bit back on track after that win against Dallas. Obviously, that was, last week?
Yeah.
And I think that the momentum's rolling. I think they might finally be over that hangover.
Which is funny because they looked good for a couple of weeks and then just kind of they've just been mediocre.
They started out good. Were they 3-1?
Yeah, and they've just been mediocre since. They haven't been bad. They just haven't been good.
Well, I subscribe to the old Colin Cowherd method. You take any player, you take their best season, which was Matt Ryan's MVP season. You take their worst season, which was probably his rookie year. Everything else in between is kind of the player he's been. And Matt Ryan's just been okay. So everybody who expected the Falcons to come out and continue to be that team they were last year, I don't think that's the case.
That might be a little discrediting to Matt Ryan. I mean, he was pretty good in 2010.
He's had good years, but he's also had bad years. He's had average years.
They were the Super Bowl favorite in 2010 until they ran into a red hot Aaron Rodgers. So I mean, I don't know if like last year obviously is his phenomenal year, and
Right, he won the MVP.
Yeah, he might not be able to achieve that level, being able to play at that level again. But I think he can still approach it. I think he still has the ability.
Well, sure, I don't disagree with
And
that.
I think he still has the team.
He's
the team still has the weapons to enable him to produce that kind of activity.
Right. What I'm saying is that his general career, he's a top 10 quarterback in this league, top 7 quarterback in this league, easily. But what I'm saying is he's not Brady. He's not
top 3.
Everybody wants to use this elite thing. I never touch the elite status because that's reserved. Elite to me is Rodgers, Brady, and I don't even know, sometimes Breeze.
Right.
Breeze sits on that, and he goes on that fence.
Breeze is the cusp.
Rodgers and Brady is the elite.
Yes.
So when everybody wants to throw those words around, you can't spell elite without Eli. Yeah, fuck that.
Oh, no. That ship sailed.
Yeah, but that's my point. Is he's a good second tier quarterback, and to win those Super Bowls, you got to have years like he had last year, that elite year.
Right.
He's not having that, and I don't think he's capable of doing that this year.
I think he is. I think they're just not doing it for some reason. That's they have to figure.
What's
it out.
the reason? Yeah, I hate this hangover thing, but it seems to be true.
Nothing on the surface is a reason. The receivers are fine; they're not injured.
No.
There was no big shakeups in personnel in the offensive line or anything.
The defense is the same. In fact, they might have gotten better.
Yeah, it's perplexing as to why.
Maybe they just missed the Georgia Dome.
Could be. Although that new stadium looks pretty sick.
It is pretty nice. We walked by it. We went to Atlanta, in February, right after the Super Bowl. Yeah, because I remember I was walking around with my Patriots shirt, and I was like, anybody who said something, I got some looks. Anyways, we walked by that. The construction was still going up, but yeah, it was pretty.
Yeah.
It was definitely pretty. But going back to the game, so you don't like either side of this game. It's hard to pick. I mean,
it was total 45. I don't even like that.
45. I like the over in that game. I like the over. I think both teams.
You like the over?
Russell Wilson on Monday night.
You like the over in what?
I don't think either defense can stop either offense at this point. I think Russell Wilson.
Both offenses are underperforming.
But like you said, they can turn it on, and these two defenses are just.
So tell me about Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson has the ability on Monday night to make it magical.
Yeah, he's the only person to ever throw a game-winning interception.
The Fail Mary?
Yeah. It's the only person in NFL history to throw a game-winning interception.
See, because it looked like a touchdown to me.
No, okay. Is your name Lance Easley?
My name is, I saw the ref go like this, and that looks like a touchdown.
I think you saw one ref go like that, and you saw
the other ref go like this, yeah. But anyways, Russell Wilson has the ability to make Monday nights special. He seems to up his performance on
Monday night game, by the way.
I know it was. My point being,
it didn't go over.
Not every game goes over, Rex.
Well, you're talking about these quarterbacks could turn it on. That was Russell Wilson versus Aaron Rodgers, and it was 14-7.
Yeah, but they also had two good defenses at that point.
10, whatever it was.
There was two good defenses on the field that night too. Yeah. I don't think there's two good defenses on the field tonight.
I don't think there's any good.
Cliff Avrill's gone. Michael Bennett's a shell of himself. Richard Sherman's gone. Cam Chancellor's gone. Earl Watson's a shell of himself. Shaquille Griffin's the star of the night. UCF love.
If you put a gun to my head and force me to pick a side, I like the under.
Okay.
At 45. I see this as a 17-14 game. a 20-14, a 21-17. 45 points. I mean, you got to go 23.5 apiece, 23.5 apiece.
I think each team's good. I think it's 27-24, somewhere around there. I think it hovers right around.
I think if it was in Atlanta, I'd be more inclined to take the over with the indoor conditions.
Of course you would. Vegas would want you to take the over.
But
I think exactly what you're saying is the reason why I think it's going to go over. I think Vegas is screaming for you to take the under. Because everybody sees, it's still the Legion of Boom. I don't care who fucking lines up out there. Well, you can put a name on anything.
oh yeah, it's lipstick on a
This
pig.
is Captain Poophead. No, it's a pile of fucking dog shit.
You
I'm
can
a
frost a
poophead.
turd, but it still tastes like shit.
Exactly. Lipstick on a pig. I think, the fact of the matter is, I think both offenses can move the ball down the field. I don't think either defense really has the ability to stop them. And why the goddamn did they not use Jimmy Graham more? I've been stewing on that one for weeks.
Oh, is he still there?
He's still there. Actually, he had 2 touchdowns the other week, but he had 2 one-yard touchdowns.
Yeah.
Jimmy Graham, I think, comes up big in this game. I think Jimmy Graham has a big game tonight. And I think 27-24, but I think Atlanta wins.
20. Oh.
I think Atlanta wins 20. I'm taking Atlanta in the over.
If you force me to pick one, I would take Atlanta and the under.
All right, so there you go. We got the Monday night. What do you think, D-Ray?
I am in favor of Atlanta on this one.
Mm-hmm. Do you have an opinion on the total?
I'm going to go with the over on that.
All right.
I think Atlanta's going to score somewhere in the 30s. I'm going to say 32.
32.
Wow,
I
that's
think
a
they're
lot
going
of
to score.
points.
I think they're going to score 4 touchdowns and go for 2 2-point conversions.
So she's saying the total's going to be eggs.
Yeah, she's saying the total
Over easy.
Yeah, over easy. Oh, I just got it.
Like that? I'll be here all week.
Yeah, you will be.
Try the veal.
So, let's talk about a guy who wasn't playing this weekend. Oh, he might have been playing with someone's genitals, but he wasn't playing on the field.
Yeah.
Oh.
Famous Jameis.
He's the uber fashionable guy.
Hey, they did good without him.
They did win without him. We didn't talk about that game, but that was really wasn't a game. It wasn't really much of a game you need to talk about. Tampa Bay won 30-20.
Was it 30-20? Was like,
Yeah. So Jameis is in a little bit of a hot water situation,
yeah. He,
and the story seems to kind of be taking twists and turns. Because apparently another player was in the car that night, Ronald Darby. It says that nothing happened.
This is a development that I haven't really heard yet.
So if you're not familiar with the story, which if you haven't been, you must be living under a rock. But Jameis Winston apparently was in Arizona, I believe.
Scottsdale, Arizona.
Yeah, last year.
East side of Phoenix.
And I guess was in an Uber car. Which depending on which story you believe, he was either in the front seat or the back seat. Which for the story to really make most sense, he'd have to be in the front seat, I guess.
One would be
Absolutely.
inclined to believe that.
Yeah. So I guess they went through a fast food drive-through, and he decided to put his hand on the Uber driver's crotch. I should preface that it was a female. On the Uber driver's crotch for an extended period of time. I'm guessing that the situation,
She
yeah.
wasn't loving it.
She was not loving it. She didn't have it her way. My first initial thought is, and I have this with every situation, it seems to be the sexual assault is the flavor of the week now. Let's just accuse everybody of it. Why are we just now hearing this a year later?
Hate that.
That is the thing. Yeah.
Well, D-Ray, you're a girl. You just said you hate that. What's the situation?
Why are they waiting so long to bring it out?
Well, I mean, apparently it was reported to Uber by the girl.
Okay.
And they
so it's
shut down.
to Uber, but not to the police.
Right.
Because the police came on and said we had no record of this incident.
Right.
Exactly.
No reports.
So it was reported to Uber. Apparently, Jameis Winston's account was shut down. Which.
Oh, no. There you go. Justice served. Case closed.
Yeah.
You turned off his app.
Turned off his app.
What the hell is that?
So he can renew it
What
as a
kind of horse shit?
new username.
Right?
So,
Let me
okay.
use one of my other 47 emails to sign up here.
But it's like, I mean, it seems like it's the perfect time to release this. Jameis is playing awful. The team was playing awful. When they were playing well last year.
Oh, well, are you putting tinfoil hat on?
I don't know. I'm just.
Are you going conspiracy? Like they're using this as cover to bench him?
Why now? They might be using this as cover to cut him.
Yeah. Ooh, even more tinfoil. I like it.
Ooh.
I mean, for all intents and purposes, this is his 3rd year in the league. He should have taken exponential steps to become better. And I think he's exponentially become worse.
Yeah, he's regressed for sure.
He's regressed. Him and Mariota both. So I think they might be taking steps to cut him. Because I think this year, it's either he's out or Cutter's out.
They can cut him for conduct unbecoming and not have to pay him any guaranteed money.
Especially in a year where they're 3-6 right now. They run with Fitzpatrick the rest of the year. They may finish 5-11. You know,
5-11, 6-10.
whatever. They get a middle of the road draft pick in a class that's littered with top tier quarterbacks.
Yeah.
To me, my foil hat's kind of ringing a little bit.
I do kind of like it. I like when we go down the rabbit hole of the conspiracy.
Yeah, I mean, other than that, I mean, why else would this be coming out right now? I mean, is there any other theories or situations where...
Or maybe she just came out with it now because it is the flavor of the week. With
No, that's
all
another-
the other
That's,
sexual harassment.
yeah, from the public side, that seems to be the thing, is let's see who we can just throw. I mean, I'm not, you take them seriously, obviously, you want to, but at the end of the day, it's like, why do these people wait until there's a, obviously the statute of limitations, blah, 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 doesn't exist. But it seems like it's just whenever it just feels fancy. You got what? You got Trump, you got Franken, you got Moore, you got Jameis Winston. I mean, who else? There's a bunch of Weinstein, Louis C.K., Kevin Spacey. Kevin Spacey's happened almost 30 years ago.
Exactly. Why are we holding on to this for 30 years?
Don't get me wrong. I understand it's a serious issue, but I think it's even more serious that you're not bringing it to light exactly when it happens.
Exactly.
So, going back to Jameis Winston, whether you believe it or not, the fact of the matter is he was in the Uber car. He did not deny that.
Yeah, that is established.
Do you think his case is a little more strong if he was sitting in the back seat? Because you can still, reach over, but I think that's a little tough.
It would be a little tougher because of the location that's alleged. It's allegedly the crotch. So that'd be pretty hard to pull off from the back seat. Like, if he grabbed her breast from the back seat, that'd be a lot easier.
Right.
But.
And if you're Jameis Winston, I mean, if you're Jameis Winston, if I put myself in his mind right now, I got out. Whether I did or didn't do it, I got off scot-free in Tallahassee with the rape saga.
I was just going to say, yeah, with all that.
With the whole rape situation, I got off.
Yep.
And I understand this is 3 years later, but there is no reason I should be anywhere near a situation that can put me in this problem.
There's no reason he should be in an Uber. The back of the NFL Players Union card has a car service number for them to call.
In any city?
Like if they're too intoxicated or whatever. Like it's like a dispatch. Like you call up this 800 number and then they get you a car.
Right.
Well, why is he in an Uber?
Yeah.
Why are you taking that
Why
chance?
do these guys drive? Why does Alden Smith drive drunk 4 times?
Exactly. Why are you taking the chance? Either drive your own car, or if you've been drinking, then use a car service that's not public.
Yeah.
You have this provided to you.
And we seem to see this every time. Guys driving drunk, they have the car service. Guys getting in an Uber and putting themselves... Peyton Manning is a classic example. He did an interview with Brian Gumbel on Real Sports. He said, if I was ever in an elevator and a woman walked in and it was just us two, I walked out of the elevator.
Yep.
I don't want to be in that elevator with her.
You extricate yourself from the situation.
Yeah, because all it is your word versus hers.
It's a negative free roll.
Yeah.
Nothing good can happen, only bad. Any outcome is either neutral or bad. Nothing good can happen, negative free roll.
He didn't seem to mind that when he was putting his balls in that Tennessee trainer's face, though. So.
Allegedly.
Yeah, well. So, he did pay a settlement on that.
Rocky Top.
But that's why. I mean, he paid a settlement because, like you said, it was his word against hers, and he just decided to make it go away. Point being is that, I'll throw my tinfoil hat back on. I think that this is a situation where they're trying to set up to cut Jameis Winston.
I like it. That makes sense. I hadn't thought of that at all. I
didn't either.
A little bit, I guess, just because I didn't think of this as a catalyst for it, though. I thought of this as like another little ancillary thing to throw on the pile.
Do you think Tampa Bay knew about it?
That's the question. That's the question.
Do you think Tampa Bay is the one?
Is Tampa leaking this?
Yeah, is Tampa Bay the one leaking this?
Did he come down and say, hey, some shit might have happened in this Uber? And they said, oh, we got it.
We'll take care of it.
We'll sweep it under the rug. Yeah. And now they're like, let's move this rug over here and see what's underneath it.
Yeah, what's underneath? Oh, look. Grab her by the pussy. So, I don't know.
That's a strong move, though, if you pull it off.
If you grab him by the pussy? Yeah.
So that's...
Apparently, it can get you in the White House, allegedly.
Puts the ass in assault.
So that's my conspiracy theory on it. I think at the end of the day, because I think at the end of the day, either Winston's gone or Cutter's gone. Dirk Cutter. So I think Dirk Cutter is fighting for his job off the field at this point.
That makes sense, yeah.
So that's my theory on it. So
I kind of like it.
We'll see. So, that was
I like it better than your Seahawks in the over, that's for sure.
I like Atlanta in the over.
Whichever team. What? What day is it? Where am I?
That's going to wrap it up for another edition of the Vegas Squares. You can catch us on all of our social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We are also on iTunes and SoundCloud. And I want to thank Rex for coming in and hanging out with us for the last
hour and 15.
That was a hell of a good podcast.
75-minute?
A little 75-minute podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Fun to be on.
You're always welcome back. Actually, I want to continue this discussion for the next podcast. So definitely going to have Rex back in the studio. We're going to have a couple extra friends back in the studio. Thanks to D-Ray for coming on aboard, our new producer.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. And Anthony, if you're out there, enjoy Michigan. I'm sure it's really shitty this time of year.
Yep.
So happy Thanksgiving to everybody if you're listening to this before Thursday. If not, if you're listening to it after Thursday, hope you had a good Thanksgiving. And we will catch you on the next one.